Welcome to the first episode of Building Better, where we explore the challenges and solutions shaping the future of the UK construction industry. I'm your host, Charlie Luxton, and today we're diving into a critical issue, the UK skills gap, with a particular focus on plastering, specifically the essential skill of skimming. The new government has set a bold target to boost house building across the UK, but there's a significant hurdle in our way: a widening skills gap in the workforce. How achievable is this ambitious housing goal when we face a shortage of skilled tradespeople? To understand the scale of the issue, let's start by looking at the current state of the construction sector. A major concern is that 1/3 of the current workforce is over the age of 50, with many nearing retirement. This is coupled with the need for an additional 937,000 workers by 2032 to meet the growing demands of the industry. We're joined by Anthony Frayne from the Construction Industry Training Board and Sam Blacknell, Head of Skills Partnership for Saint-Gobain Interior Solutions, to discuss this issue.
The skills shortage isn't really a new thing, but has certainly been exacerbated by the 2016 decision to leave the European Union, as many employers relied upon a migrant workforce from the European Union. That has not been replaced, and there are interventions needed to get more people into skilled work in construction.
From our focus, plastering and dry lining within interior systems, it's huge. We're seeing, a shortage of hundreds and hundreds of individuals per year coming into the trade that is required to meet what is forecast going over the next 5 years. I think there's many causes from a skills back. We've obviously had a shortage of labour, if you look at Brexit and everything, but we've also seen over the last 10, 15 years a real push for university places, and I would say construction taking a back seat for what the younger generation coming in want to do when they leave school. We do quite a lot within schools, and we see that construction isn't promoted as good as it should be.
Education in Britain, at the moment, what we've got is potentially what could be perceived as an academic education system that doesn't give young people a broad understanding of wider vocational routes into employment and education and training, and that's not just for construction, it's across all sectors. There has been a change with something called the Gatsby benchmarks, where the importance of impartial careers of initial advice and guidance has to be given to students at schools. As a non-governmental department, we can't lobby, but we can advise. So again, ultimately what we do is we obviously pass this feedback into the Department for Education, and that helps sort of steer some of those discussions around policy. But what we do is we work through others, we influence other government departments, other local stakeholders, who build relationships with local authorities, careers hubs, for example, that will allow them to do that work, pass that knowledge on, and then they can come and work directly with our employers.
I don't think qualifications have helped. We've seen plastering apprenticeships move to sort of 3 years in length rather than 2. And I think, from an employer taking somebody on to have, you realise that you've got to pay their wages for 3 years rather than 2, that's had a big effect on people coming into industry as well. That is changing. Those qualifications are changing, and from this year, that'll be back to a 2-year course. So they're sort of things that were within our remit that we feel that we can support and change as a manufacturer and work closely with industry on.
CITB levy registered employers can access a range of funding. So for example, if we look really simply at an apprenticeship, so hypothetically speaking, let's say a level 2 plastering apprentice. In England, that would usually take 2 years for the duration of the apprenticeship. So what an employer can expect to get is quarterly payments each year during the duration of the apprenticeship, standard is £625, so £2,500 per year, as long as that apprentice is still in learning. When that apprentice then achieves the apprenticeship standard, the employer is also eligible for a £3,500 achievement grant. So again, realistically, you're looking there in the region of £8,500 per apprentice in grant funding, subject to the grant scheme rules of CITB. Now, prior to that, we run something called the Interwork Grant, incentivising employers to take on young people on work experience. So what that means is if an employer takes a learner from a college or a private training provider that's funded by the ESFA, they are eligible for a £500 payment, assuming it's an eligible course and the learner has done 30 hours of work experience. If the employer then decides they want to employ the work experience learner, the employer is also entitled to an extra £1,000 grant on top of that. So potentially, if a plastering company was to take on an apprentice and do work experience, they're looking at least £10,000 in grant funding from CITB. They're subject to the grant scheme rules.
From a Saint-Gobain perspective, the skills gap has a big impact on us. Saint-Gobain are basically around construction manufacturing. So that goes into different industries as well, not just plastering and dry lining. But ultimately, we look to innovate, make new products, put them into industry. But if we haven't got people that can use those products, we've also got to try and find different ways that those can fit into a market with different people, different technologies. And that is a big ask for any manufacturer, even one the size of Saint-Gobain. We are obviously massively focused around the products that we produce and we put into the market, because we want the people using them to use them correctly, but we also want them to have a long career and the longevity and through that. And really, some of the really good stuff that we get to do with colleges is show them and schools, is show them what the career can be like. So, you're talking from a plasterer, you can work for a subcontractor, you can be your own boss, but you can also link into different qualifications and become something else. You can, be a supervisor, you can go on to be a site manager and so on and so forth. So the career is massive. And we just want to show that in different ways.
You're looking at 300,000 new homes every year. At the moment, it's probably fair to say that we're struggling in terms of labour to be able to deliver that. However, where we've made a good start in that, particularly at CITB, is the house building sector skills plan is up and running. What also helps as well is we do have a government and policy relations team that are based in with DFE, as we're a non-governmental department. And again, we work very, very closely with policymakers in DFE and sort of getting that information across the ministers so that the ministers are informed, and there's a really good working relationship there, so we can feed back on industry's behalf what they need to make sure that they're able to meet those targets. Our Industry Impact Fund is also looking at dealing with the tutor and trainer shortages, but we're really keen on getting ideas from industry where we can train the next set of tutors and trainers. But ultimately, that ageing workforce has such great knowledge. They're training, they're mentoring, they just don't know they're doing it. So it's about really just making them aware of what they're doing and supporting them to do that and the great work that they do.
I think people are becoming aware of what wear and tear it can do on your body over a certain amount of time. But also from that, if people aren't seeing it advertised or it's not on social media as much as what other things are, I just don't think they're going to take it up, unless their dad's in the trade or uncle's in the trade or someone that they know closely, just really don't know what it is. And opening up those opportunities can allow people to obviously have a go and just see if they like it or not. A big aspect of where we fall down, especially coming into sort of plastering and dry lining, and as we've kind of touched on construction as a whole, is the manual labour side. So it is looking at ways that we can make it easier to do the job, and having women on board for those ideas is key. I'm having some really interesting conversations with some contractors that really want more women to come and work on their labour force, and they have tried and they have put different initiatives in place to get people in, but they're just leaving because they're still really heavy boards, they're big, they might not really fancy plastering. So it's going back to that innovation, and we do quite a lot well. We've done quite a lot of talks with women in construction, so we will go to site, and when they're on training courses, speak to them about the trade, do demonstrations and show them what the possibilities are.
We have something called our Industry Impact Fund. So what the Industry Impact Fund provides is up to £500,000 of funding for an innovative idea led by industry. And again, one of the key themes we're looking at is inclusion, or EDI. So again, what we would really encourage is those employers that are good at getting females into construction, we would welcome the opportunity to discuss with them about how we could potentially provide some funding for larger scale projects that can go across industry and ultimately attract women into construction. Because if you look at it, 17% of construction's workforce is female. If you boil it down to actually the trades, it's 2%, which is clearly not good enough. So there's a piece of attraction work to do on that. But the Impact Fund is something that we could use to help fund that and sort of fund some new initiatives. I think perhaps it's the challenge of that perception, isn't it? I think there's always that, it's a bit of a cliche, but you can never make a second first impression, for want of a better term. And there's this perception, this muddy, poor pay. I suppose that's where our role comes in, and industry's role comes in, to be able to broaden that awareness, use those role models and actually show, if you look at construction, there's plenty of work to go around. And it's one of probably more if you choose that route, employment is going to be stable and well paid, which you probably can't say for many other sectors. Something that could help the skills shortage is obviously, if we think of our manufacturers, increasingly that we do see that manufacturers are delivering training. Again, as an industry training board, we're really interested to talk to you about that, particularly in light of our employer networks, to see how we can support with that. There's a wealth of knowledge out there, and rather than us doing things in silos, let's work together and support the industry to get that skilled, competent workforce now and in the future.
So we support 60 colleges nationally. We see the majority of them through the Midlands and the North, especially as sort of Plasterers declined in the Southeast, but we're also working with more private training providers. So that figure is not just FE colleges, further education colleges, it is private training providers. But those 60 colleges are part of our Thistle Partnership Programme. But the Thistle Partnership Programme has been around for over 20 years. And we just look at different ways with engaging with colleges and see how we can support. And what we do is we provide free material, which is great, they all love, but we actually get in, we do presentations around Saint-Gobain and SGIS and the products that we produce and manufacture. And then we also do demonstrations. So we actually table it as sort of bronze, silver, gold. So as that partnership effect, we put things in place that we would love them to do. And the more they do, the more they kind of get out of us. So yeah, product demonstrations, student talks, materials, but then in the engagement that we do with the likes of Skill Build, regional and national competitions, we want these students to have the ability to enter. So we put that kind of at the forefront of what our partnership is about.
Thank you for that insightful overview, Anthony and Sam. It's great to hear about the challenges and opportunities young people face in the industry, as well as the great work being done by the Construction Industry Training Board. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Building Better.
Construction should be constructive. As an industry, everything we do should help make life better for people and planet by building better through progress and practice. Welcome to where better comes together. The new home for ideas, insights and inspiration to help all of us who create interior spaces on our way to building better.